Our Highline Voices, 106.5 KQWZ LPFM.
Connecting Highline and our region.
History, cultural heritage, art, performances, contemporary pop culture.
We collect, preserve, and tell the stories of the Highline region and its people.
We want to embrace our differences and similarities.
We want to extend our mission outside the walls of the museum. Our Highline Voices, 106.5 KQWZ LPFM.
Hi everyone, this is Nancy from the Highline Heritage Museum, and welcome back. Today we have Daniel, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. But once again, one of the reasons why we're doing this project is to talk about those community values and trying to make sense as to why do we need to hear the stories and why do we need to connect and kind of capture the sense of belonging. So, Daniel, thank you so much for allowing me to do this interview with you today. I know that we've known each other for a few years. I can say that now, for a few years. And it's always been a joy to chatting with you, but I think it's going to be kind of cool to see how this conversation takes us about the museum work that we do and what that means.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Of course. Thank you for having me here.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah, of course.
Who are you? Tell us your name and then what you do.
So I am Daniel Roberts. I am a graduate student from New Mexico State University who now has lived up here for about 6 or 7 years now, I think. I work at the Museum of Flight as a public safety officer, and I volunteer here and I do various odds and ends, including probably editing this video.
Oh yeah, he's gonna be editing this video. He's the one who's been helping us with that, and not only that, he's also working with Roger. If you ever watch those videos, and now and then, he is behind the camera. He is the one who, in the beginning, it used to be me doing all that work, but it was too much for me to do all of it. And then you jump in and you just help us with that. So whoever is watching those Roger's video now and then, ta-da, is the other part of it. So museum work. I know that you've gone to school for this, and I did myself that, almost 20 years ago. And I was at the Museum of Light. I think it was in 2006 when I was there. And so I spent every day, doing some things in there. But why museums? What is about museums that you like?
I just I always, when I was a kid, I liked this, just the stories of learning about like past events, what was going on. And then it was just kind of seeing kind of the connections of like what happened in the past and how we get to where we are now, like seeing some of the similarities. Back in my hometown, you'll see a whole lot of like adobe houses, and like, which is like a kind of a type of a mud type of house. Bad way of describing it, but it was kind of seeing, well, where did this come from? And then seeing like like the Pueblo there and like how it continues. There's a lot of people here that have connections to that. And that's just like one of many things. It's also just been through my research when I was working on my thesis, seeing like how the country of Japan went from like World War II to present day, and it's just seeing how it goes from there and how societies like developed from then.
Yeah, and you've been to Japan, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep. And when you have been living in and experiencing that daily routine, it's not just traveling as I'm just a tourist and get a little glimpse of it, but you actually have been into a routine into different places, New Mexico, Japan, no other place, right?
No, I've been to England and Ireland. But that was only like for a couple of weeks, and then also I went to China and went through like Beijing to Xi'an to Shanghai. And
But you did not live there. You did not work in a project there, did you?
no.
So they were just passing by. But it's still within your travels and within you being exposed to different cultures, I'm sure it gives you the awareness of how different we all are and how similar we are at the same time. So museums is something that we share. It's a passion of us. And what part of the museum work is it that you like? What is the part that really gets you excited?
So I really like the oral history type of
Mm-hmm.
part, which I enjoy doing this editing. It's just kind of hearing fun stories, because it's the lesser heard stories. It's like the kind of, you have the grand stories of the great people, generals, and all that, but then you don't hear as often like the smaller stories, and that's one of my favorite parts.
Mm-hmm.
And then probably it's also is like with the things, the artifacts, the like objects. I just seeing like what day-to-day things that people saw that I'm like, this looks completely unique to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the mystery and the magic of objects is that when you touch something and you know that has traveled through time, and then there's a context behind it. Um, could be someone like you said, maybe someone who's not as famous or popular, or somebody that you know, but it has a meaningful story behind it. And that's another reason why we do the project that we do here. It's just that I really believe all the stories matter. It's not like one is more important than the other. All of us got something to share and something that we can learn from each other. Objects. Ah, boy. I was just in a meeting before this one with this organization from in New York City, and we're talking a little bit about history. And I was telling them, well, we are 150 years behind you, and so this is not, it's what I say behind is that 1776 been established as a country. The time it was way more progressive, and everything was more cemented that here in the Pacific Northwest. When you don't see, you see it around 1850s, and so like big contrast on that. And then for us is here in the South, South Seattle is 1870s, 1880s when we started to see more people coming into the area. And so when you look at the history timeline of the East Coast versus the West Coast is completely different. And how we, even today, we are more united with the communications and then social media and things like that. But we still have that generational area that we have not been able to meet yet. So museums again, collections, stories. And then you also work with this bigger institution, which I'm sure is a completely different feel. You really deal with, I mean, we're small, and so we don't get the thousands or hundreds as you do. What you think about the different ways, or the ways that you experience in a small museum and a bigger museum?
So when I work at the Museum of Flight, it's very much like since it's obviously a larger museum, everything's separated into like kind of departments. Everyone has their specialty. You have the people that are specialized in IT, you have the ones that are specialized in collections, and they might dabble a little bit in, there might be a little bit of overlap, but by and large, each one is like doing their own thing, and then they communicate with each other to work together to achieve whatever goals they're trying.
Mhm.
When working here, it's very much kind of a jack of all trades. Try and like each has like their benefits. Like the Museum of Flight, like they can make one of their most recent temporary exhibits is really amazing. And I mean, that comes from people spending years, I think, on getting all the things together.
Yeah.
But it's also just there's something kind of nice about being able to get a feel of every little part of the museum.
Yeah, yeah. There's throughout, and I don't know if I have expressed that in the interviews enough, but regardless if you're a big museum, a small museum, is all about still doing the same work. Meaning, we can be a small, tiny little restaurant, but we still need to serve the food. We still need to cook it. We still need to go in the back side of the house and do the administration component. And so, either we're serving for one person or two, or thousands of people, you still do that work, that you still have that format. And I used to teach in the UW, University of Washington, 2 years exhibit design, and on the program that you actually went through. So you were lucky that was not your teacher. Well, what year did you went to school?
For the UW one, which
Uh-huh.
was 2022, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, mine was I think 2016, 2017, those 2 years that I was. So yeah, you got lucky that traumatized you as maybe your instructor. But what I like about that program is that when you come to it, it's not about working in a big institution or small institution. It's about getting the general knowledge of what the museum work is about. And all of them have the same for me. And it's something that as experience and time has come into. I divide things into 4 areas. We have the public side. And that's only the areas I'm going to address. Only what the public sees. No, everything else. Everything else is way too long to list. But we got exhibits, which is, when you come to the space and you have exhibits. You have programming, which means it's all live events and lectures, presentations, and the interaction, direct interaction for the public with the specific topics. Then we have education. Education is when you tap and design things to work directly with the youth, with the school districts, with teachers and parents, and it's all just composed to that. It could be through field trips, educational trunks, visit to schools, co-creating exhibits, and so on. So that is education. And then lastly is preservation. Preservation and the curatorial component of how to take care of, collections management and the preservation of not only a physical object, but an object, an artifact, you can say it as an artifact, including a piece of paper or in a document, in a postcard, in photos. Even though it's a two-dimensional thing, you still see that as an artifact instead of a three-dimensional object, which that's when you actually have a tangible thing to play with. What type of collections do you like? Because you can go all the way from 3D technological stuff to 2D textile and so on.
Well, I will always have a soft spot for like textiles because growing up, my mom always made me quilts.
Oh,
So I
nice.
still have like two of them she's made. One of them was earlier one was like kind of donated, kind of gotten a little too tattered, so it had to go. But so I've always liked those. I think I just like the little kind of the small objects, the things that like you might just have on your desk or like what you might not even realize it's there because it's like you become like blind to it because it's just always sitting there. So I like those kind of like day-to-day things.
Yeah.
Those are so I guess technically they'd probably be 3D objects, but
Yeah, so something that you can play with.
yeah.
Yeah, there's one of the classes that I took, and then also my mentor, who passed away recently. One of them, I got two mentors now. One who's right now with me, and then the other one who passed away. But Loe, he used to be a director of the Smithsonian, and he used to just teach me about, the importance of one object. And he will give me so many examples of like you can do a full gallery just using one three-dimensional object, and then you can develop everything from there. Let's just say that we're doing a pencil. You say, well, it's a pencil. What are you, how can you feel a gallery out of it? But you learn a lesson and you start with 50 questions, ask 50, create or produce 50 questions about a pencil. And then you realize that it is a lot to talk about, all the way from the composition, who designed it, what was going on, who owned it, what happened, the local and global context and impacts. And so it's like you can go in so many directions with every single object, even though it's just a pencil. And then you can also create like interactive play games and you can also create like videos out of it, and you can create games that will tap it into the different parts of us. It's sensorial elements. It could be smells, hearing, visual, playing with it, and so on. And so I know I'm talking a lot,
No.
and this is more about us talking.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, I do agree with that. When I went up to the Nordic Museum, it was interesting seeing some of the, as you're talking, like composition of some of the objects. So a lot of at least two of the objects they had was made from, well, fish.
Hmm.
Like they had a lamp that was there and then shoes. And it's kind of, I guess it would tell you what they had available, what they have, up in that area. Probably fish is one of the biggest resources you'll have. So,
Mm-hmm.
and it did make me wish that they had a little bit more talking about like this lamp of all things. Like, how does that work? It's almost you want to see it actually turned on, but I know they got to keep that would be a wear and tear on the object. But
Yeah. Yeah. The one of the most basic things is about when you're working with collections, you want to make sure that if you display in it, that rule doesn't apply to all the museums, but that's something that we do internally, that we want to make sure that we are not exposing it longer than 6 months. When they are delicates, when they are not steady or stable, and why? Because the work curator and the role of conservation and preservation is all about making sure that the object stays longer than just our generation, that it can reach out many generations after that. Um, every museum has their own different. I was it this? Can you turn not this way, the other way, the other way,
yeah.
the other? I saw something. Yeah, it says the Asian Art Museum. And so see, it's I can see, and I think throughout the years I've seen some glimpses of not only, the Museum of Light, or not only our museum, and now you mentioned Nordic, but then also you had the Asian Art Museum. And and this is related to an object on an exhibit, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I forget exactly which one it was, but it's been a couple of years since I went to this one, but it's it's fun stuff they have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now that's the beauty of museums, I think, is that regardless of what or which one is that you engage in with, there's always the magic of the storytelling and the discovering and the being curious. I'm a very curious person. If it was me, I love my job as a director. I do. I truly do. But working with either with the youth or working with collections, that's like for me before being a director and even before working with exhibits. So I spent many years as a curator of collections, and it's just a joy. It's just a joy to come to a box, open it up, and have no idea what is in that box. And then from there, like, what is this? And really start diving into researching more about that and be appreciative of there's a couple objects that we just don't know what they are, and there's no paper trail, there's nothing to tell us what we have and why we have it. Context, so many times truly matters.
Yeah.
But have you encountered an artifact that you really were either as a busy in a museum or now as an adult that really captivated you? Something that really, really captured your attention?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and give another shout out to the Museum of Flight. The full fuselage trainer is a
Mm-hmm.
really neat artifact. So a lot of guests they'll come in and they'll be kind of a little bit disappointed that it's not a real shuttle
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, this thing would never go into space. But the
Mm-hmm.
thing is, it's the object is it's something that every astronaut that ever rode on a shuttle they trained on it. So it's that kind of idea of the history of space that all these people were here, and you can kind of see that history because like on the side of the shuttle you can see like some scuff marks from when they were practicing like rappelling out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get these stories of from like the various docents at the museum talking about like when they were giving tours to the astronauts, and then they'd hop over into the pilot seat or captain seat, or I think it's captain, so is the proper term, and
Mm-hmm.
which technically aren't supposed to, but it's just them talking about like their time on it, and
Mm-hmm.
like these people have these distinct memories of here, and so I thought that that was just a really fascinating piece, and it's a weird artifact in that you can technically walk in it,
Mm-hmm.
so.
Yeah, that's can you imagine the idea of if I mean all objects can speak to you, all of them. It's just how it's happening. And so that's supposed to be the role of curators, is to be able to bring that voice out into the public, either through writing, so articles or exhibits or giving presentations and so on. We used to have a program right when we started is the night at the museum, but we might take it. Who knows? We stopped doing that because of COVID, and we had to close and also capacity. But what the program was about is highlighting one object from our collections and really diving into just, going all the way, giving a presentation about that object in person. There are some objects that you don't really talk much about. One of them that we did, actually the very first one, it might be a bit weird what I'm gonna say this one, but it was undergarments for women. Like, you don't really talk about it much, and so that was kind of fun to bring undergarments in the conference room and just talk about what they are and the functions of them. Another one that we did was a spy camera from during World War II, actually Japanese camera.
Oh, wow.
But it's like this tiny little thing. I mean, it's just like tiny, tiny, tiny thing. And then that's why it was spy, because you would no guess it's actually a camera. And then on top of it, the film is still there, and it's actually a real film. And it just blows your mind away. Oh, another one that we have is hearing aid. Me growing up with hearing aids, I did not grow up with actually having access to seeing one, because nobody in my family and nobody around me had one. And so it was fascinating to come here and actually have the very same brand name as I have it now. My name's Phonak, and the one that we have here is Phonak, is probably from, I don't know, 1930s or so. Like, you can see the label so old and the format. Yeah, I love objects. There's so much to say, so much to do. If it was you, let's just say that you have your own museum. What kind of museum will you curate, be the director, fund, make it survive? Will you choose one? Because it's also very thematic. I mean, we are history museum, so we cover a lot of the things, but there's other museums that is really specific to something. If it was your wish having your own museum, what would that be?
Good question. Shoot, there's like so many different options. It's like like there's the temptation of focusing more on like ocean type, objects because grew up in a desert, but thanks to my mom, I always had a love of the ocean. And so I think that's probably something I'd want to see what I could do with whether that's like fishing like equipment or like, ships. Like, I mean, obviously that'd start taking a lot of space.
All fun objects under the water.
Yeah, yeah.
You like that detective work?
Yeah, no,
You like that the mysteries?
yeah, and I like to see it's like, well, what is this? Especially like fishing objects. I'm like, I don't even know what is this thing supposed to be?
Yeah.
And it's a very specific tool. I'm like, oh, I just thought you caught the fish and or something like that. And
There's a new exhibit, the Titanic exhibit is, I don't know if it's up here or not, but I can see, a little bit of what you're saying, and chips and those artifacts. And what I like about that one, based on commercials, please don't pay too much attention to what I'm saying, but based on commercials or also what I'm watching, seems to be a mix of immersive with bringing in some of the true artifacts. I hope they are true artifacts. That's super cool if they're able to do that.
yeah, I heard about that one. I think one of my coworkers had actually gone to it, and it's something, unless you had told me on it, was that when you go there, you get like a person and you kind of walk through like their life through when they're on the Titanic.
Oh my gosh. So like you taking ownership of a person's storyline, and then it's like if it's you going through all of it.
Right. And then at the
Oh,
very end, you find out whether or not you had lived or that person lived or died.
wow. No, that is interesting too. That's a great way of doing an engaging exhibit. So that is super cool. Yeah.
And it was apparently they had the man that had initially gone to the well known like retrieval of the Titanic or excavating it. He was there and like just free to talk to. And most people didn't even realize that was him. It was
Wow.
just having that kind of knowledge or that person available to you.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I think that there's something about like the idea of just kind of going through it, where you don't know if this is the person that survived or not. You just see what they probably did see. That's that's a definitely an interesting way of doing it. There's another museum, I think it was in the South, that kind of gave people like the idea of like going through one of the old Southern homes, and you had it like going through initially, normal entryway. Then they also gave an entry through the like servants' quarters or like the slaves' quarters, and it was just
Mm.
kind of giving this, kind of immersive feel. And if it's a if that's available for those type of museums, I think that's got to be a pretty amazing way of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you got me thinking. There's so much we can do here in this museum. But it will be, and then I've seen throughout the years, like immersing yourself into different exhibits using digital materials, but then also you as simple as just taking a piece of paper saying your name is this, a little bit of your bio, and then act on it. I've seen many examples of that throughout the years. My one of my main goals, and hopefully it's the museum's goals too, as a general, is that people should identify themselves with who are they, who are we, and so we do have a heritage project that is all about kind of have the assessment, like really, what makes you? Can you share your makeup? Can you share your profile? And then can you really analyze what makes you you? Culturally, what's home to you, and then your roots, either through DNA research or genealogy research. The the idea of having fun with museums is something that I would like to continue to cultivate. Do you think museums are fun or boring? Do you think museums are well? What is your impressions of museums?
I think they can range, but like a lot of museums, you can always hopefully find the passion behind each person. Like, like I've told you before, I like the social history type of things. And admittedly, like painting is part of social, but that's like one of my lesser interests.
Mm.
But I've seen a couple of museums where it was just a kind of an afterthought and it shows, but then you see ones that's like you can see that they really, really care about this. Like you have them separated into times, you have them separated into themes, you have them explaining it, and
Hmm.
there's something about like even if it's not your greatest interest, that if someone has that interest, they kind of builds that energy. And so that's like, traditional museums like the ones I described, also where it's immersive. Those are those are probably my favorite, just because it's just that kind of idea and mystery of. And then like with if they have cool objects, of course that's cool. Great. Like the Nordic have like a lot of neat different things spread out, and you weren't immediately sure what it was. Then
So I got a question. So this is the second time you bring Nordic. So were you in a class or were you in a presentation, a program?
oh no, I just went up with my mom and I was bored and
Got it. Got it. So that was just you as a visitor. No,
yeah.
I got a story well, with the Nordic. I in 2006 or 2005 or even 2004, I don't remember. Those 3 years. I actually was taking museum studies classes at the Nordic. And so for 6 months, I had to go every single weekend to, and that was way before, the build of the museum and all of that. But there was a lot of projects that we need to work with actual artifacts. And it was so fascinating. It was so cool to number one, to see the different cultures within one museum because you're not only dealing with one ethnicity, you're dealing with, the Swedish or Nordic, Norway or Iceland and so on. And so that was really interesting to see how contrast they are, but then how common they are in some of the areas. But yeah, they do have really awesome collections. Hi to everyone at the Nordic. Mwah. Hope you're doing good. So with this concept of museums, one area that worries me the most, and I know that that's the largest audience that we have not served that good, is with the teenagers. There's children's museums, there's science, there's the zoo, there's all kinds of museums out there, but there's not there's the audience. It is proven that the biggest audience that we are not serving as museums are our teenagers. They are tricky. I got my own little monster. She's my love. She is the love of my life. But oh my God, I cannot I cannot deny that she does cause me trouble at times. And so my beautiful, cute little monster, she is almost 18, and it's not that easy to work with them. They are so moody. Some of them are really, into things and really passionate, but it's hard to keep them engaged because they are so absorbed with friends. They are so absorbed with what's going on around them that it's hard for them to see beyond the circle. If you had to work with teenagers, how will you engage them? How will you attract them?
I think it almost might be like, I know history's like that past 20 years, but it might be trying to rope them in with something of like talking about like popular culture of things that they're interested in.
Yeah.
So you can have them talk about whoever their favorite artist is, and then you can start it, then prodding them to talk about more of like, well, where did they get their inspirations from? And where did those inspirations come from? Like, what are they?
Yeah.
So like, I mean, you got to like figure out what interests them, so you can take it from this is the assignment for History 11 to this is the assignment for History 11, but at least it's kind of interesting.
Would you like to? Should we create something for the youth?
I mean,
Would you like to think about what can we do working with it, all the way from exhibit the science elements to educational projects? Any ideas that you might have as you continue this journey of this, museum field, and how every institution is so different from each other, regardless of the size or the mission or of all that. Our time is limited now. We only got a few more minutes left. But yeah, this is what I like about our museum work, is that it is open to create something new constantly.
Yeah.
That if you use some project, you develop it, you implementing it, it's doing okay, but then you need to constantly think about what else you can do, or change it, upgrade it. So any last thoughts before we go?
I think it's just whether or not you find museums boring or cool, just keep trying on different ones, because
True.
you're gonna always find something that's all of them are different. And so if you haven't liked them before, you might just find one that sings to you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that you connected with. So Daniel, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to do this interview with you. We see each other every week. But I think it's the first time we actually dive into museum work, more like general, and like provide a little bit of a glimpse of what it is about museum work that we like. So thank you for the opportunity to do this interview with you.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time, hopefully. Thank you. Bye.
Our Highline Voices, 106.5 KQWZ LP FM. We envision ourselves sitting at a round table where no one is the leader and stories are heard respectfully, regardless of gender, age, sexual orientation, disabilities, or ethnicity. Our mission is we collect, preserve, and tell the stories of the Highline region and its people. We want to extend our mission outside the walls of the museum. Our Highline Voices represents us all, honoring our past, celebrating our present, and uniting to cultivate our future. This project allows us to reach out to demographics who might be unable to visit the museum. People with disabilities, low-income families, people who don't trust museums, and more. In partnership, we are launching a locally programmed new radio station at the museum, featuring recorded and live Highline's heritage, history, culture, arts, and more. Are you interested in sharing your story? Email director@highlinemuseum.org.